Hello, AHS. I am Mrs. Bedford, and I know I've worked with some of you in the past, and some of you are new students to me, so it's really great to start to get to know all of you through this assignment that we're doing together. I hope everyone is doing well, first of all. I really miss working with you in the classroom. This has definitely been a little bit different, but also still kind of interesting and fun at the same time. So I hope you're finding your new classes interesting and that they're keeping you busy. And I hope that you are doing well. And I really hope that I get to see you again in the fall or at graduation if there's any seniors in here. So anyway, last week, Mrs. Polarsky had you thinking about how to start brainstorming creatively this idea for an amusement park. Now that you have some ideas in place, it's going to be time to develop the front street of the amusement park using one-point perspective. Before we begin talking about the technical aspects of drawing in one-point perspective, it's going to be time to focus on the research that you did last week and maybe do a little bit more if you need to figure out how to actually design these amusement parks and how other amusement parks look from their front streets. So last week you researched at least 3 different amusement parks to identify what is working in those parks. In your brainstorming session, you were probably taking some notes and doing some creative thinking. Now is the opportunity to take what you have from your brainstorm session and your slides from last week and apply them into a concrete visual representation of your park. So there are some things to think about based on your ideas from last week that you might want to incorporate in your design before we get started with the drawing part. So think about what's the brand? What is your theme? As Mrs. Polarsky said, what is it that you want people to feel when they come into the amusement park? Think about what has been working well in those 3 parks, at least 3 that you looked at last week, and then how do those parks draw people in with their brand? The front street of your amusement park is going to be the first thing that people see when they come into your park and likely where they will probably spend most of their time. How are you welcoming people into the park? Are the places where they need to use the restroom, get food and drinks, clearly labeled and easy to find? Is the name of your park going to be visible at the entrance? Another idea that you might want to think about is, just what you want people to feel, that feeling when they come in. So think about how all of these things come together into how you're going to design this park so that it's welcoming and easy to access what people need while they're in your park. Once you have the ideas about how these things might look, it's time to start drawing. So I'm going to be showing you a tutorial on how to do a one-point perspective drawing. So please get a piece of paper ready. You can follow along with me. I would highly recommend it, especially if you've never done a one-point perspective drawing before. Follow along with me, and you can do it as sort of a practice sketch, or this could actually be your final one when you follow along with me, and then you can start adding your details as you have time. Grab a ruler, a pencil, and an eraser, because you probably are going to need the eraser, and that's okay. If you don't have a ruler, you can actually take something with a hard edge like a book or a folder or a notebook or a thin piece of cardboard. Sometimes you can even just take a piece of paper and fold it a couple times to get a thicker edge so you can follow along with an edge to get some straight lines. As far as color, you can add color if you want to, if you have materials at home to do so, but that's not required for this assignment. Just a pencil drawing is sufficient for now. When you're done with your drawing, you're going to attach it to Google Classroom. Also in Google Classroom with this assignment is a couple links of some ideas for inspiration, so feel free to check those out too before we get started with the tutorial. So go ahead and grab pencil, paper, make sure you have an eraser and some kind of a straight edge or ruler, and we'll get started with the one-point perspective drawing. All right, so hopefully you've had time to get your materials together. Again, you'll need a paper, a pencil, an eraser, and a ruler or a straight edge of some type that you can use to draw some straight lines. So I'm using an 11 by 14 sheet of paper just because I have some laying around here. If you don't have that size paper, that's totally fine. An 8.5 by 11 standard sheet of paper will work just fine for this. So hopefully you have some computer paper laying around. If not, sometimes I give my kids like the backs of letters that I've gotten if they're blank on the back to draw on. And if you absolutely have to, you could also use lined paper if you need to as well. So use whatever you have available to you at home right now. All right, so when we talk about 1-point perspective, what that means is that all of the lines converge at 1 point in the distance. When you have been driving, or in a car with someone that's driving at different times, you probably have noticed that if you've gone over like railroad tracks, you might have noticed that as the railroad tracks go further into the distance, it appears that they are converging at the center and they're getting smaller. We know that that's not really happening. It's just perspective that's making it look like that. Same thing with roads. You might look at a road far away and it looks like it's ending when it comes to a point, but that's not actually what's happening. It's just getting further away from us and our perspective is shifting. So you are going to start by drawing a horizon line. The horizon line is the line on the horizon at which it appears like the earth and the sky meet. It is also the place where you will have your vanishing point. I'll explain vanishing point in a second. So you'll have to decide where you want your horizon line. It's up to you. If your horizon line is a little bit further in the background, the buildings up front are going to appear a little bit larger and more from the top. If your horizon line is lower, you're going to have a little bit less here as far as buildings, but you can have something a little bit larger in the back, like your main attraction. So on the examples that I gave you to look at for main streets, you might have noticed, like if you think about the Magic Kingdom, Disney, everything goes back to this converging line, and then there's the Magic Kingdom, I think it's Cinderella's castle, back there. So it's up to you. Do you want to have something back here that's your main attraction? Or do you want to have more focus placed on the buildings up in the front, and maybe a gate of some type? So, I don't know what that is. Anyway, I'm going to draw my horizon line probably just about in the center for these purposes, but draw it where you wish. Oops. Let's try that again. That's why we need erasers. Okay, so this is your horizon line. I'm going to label it for the purposes of this demonstration. You do not need to if you don't want to, especially if this is going to be the one that you actually create for your final copy. So on that horizon line, when we talk about 1-point perspective, there's a vanishing point. Usually it's about in the center. That makes things a little bit easier. The vanishing point is the line at which it appears. Vanishing point. The line at which it appears that parallel lines converge. So that's going to be your vanishing point back there. Now what you want to do is start with drawing your sidewalks, essentially, the fronts of your streets. So I'm going to draw 2 lines going back toward the vanishing point. So now you can probably tell this almost looks kind of like a road or a street. Now, when you're drawing buildings or anything like that that's going along the sides here, all of the vertical lines, vertical, are the ones that are straight up and down. They will always be straight up and down. There will be no changes to how they lean. Horizontal lines, on the other hand, so the tops and the bottoms of the buildings, those ones are probably going to slant a little bit. So I'll kind of show you what I mean here. So, okay, let me start with my first building. So vertical lines will always be straight up and down. So I'm not going to, I'm going to keep the ruler straight as I can. One little trick, I hope the camera is high enough that you can see this. If you want to be really technical, one trick is to keep your ruler perpendicular with the edge of your paper. So that way you know that your line is actually straight up and down. So I'm going to draw my first building. And I may end up having to erase these lines later, and that's fine. I'm just kind of drawing in where the building is. Okay, so as I mentioned, it is the horizontal lines that angle toward the vanishing point. Right now we have the bottom of the building angling toward the vanishing point, but we need to get the top of the building angled. So you are going to line your ruler up with the vanishing point and then one of these lines that you've created. And you might have a little extra line, and if you do, that's fine, just erase it away. Now, this side of the building is a little bit different. This side is actually going to be going off toward another angle that we can't really see, another vanishing point on this side. So we're just going to kind of draw a line that's angled backward. Okay, so this is your first building. Now, when you start adding designs to the building, like let's say you want to have a door or some windows, again, all horizontal lines, all vertical lines will be straight up and down. So let me make a door. It is the vertical horizontal line that is going toward the vanishing point that is going to be at an angle. So I'm going to draw a line going toward the vanishing point, and I don't need this, so I'm going to erase that. I also don't really need the horizon line. I drew this kind of dark, and I'm using an 8B pencil, so those of you in art know that it's a dark one. It's not really going to erase very good, but I was hoping it would show up well on camera. So that is not going to go away right now. You can also add some windows at the top if you want. So again, you can use vertical lines. Will always be straight up and down. And then it is your horizontal lines that are going to go toward the vanishing point. And maybe I'll keep that line there, and it looks like it needs to be. So you can see I'm constantly angling any of my horizontal lines so that they go backward toward the vanishing point. So this might be a set of windows. You could also do something like make this into a sign. Maybe I'll try that on another one. So let me go on this side and show you what it would look like. This building went up above the horizon line, so it followed some different rules as far as how it angled. But remember, no matter what, all of these horizontal lines will angle toward the vanishing point. Let me try one that is going to be below the horizon line. So let me put a smaller, shorter building here. So this is going to be the front of the building that's facing the main street. We are going to draw 3 vertical lines. And then you are going to, this is the corner of the building that's closest to you from your perspective. So you are going to take your ruler, angle this corner of the building up toward the vanishing point. This one, let me see if I can get this correct here for you. All right. The back of the building here will also angle toward the vanishing point. And then this is where it gets a little bit tricky. And this is why I would probably recommend just putting the buildings above the horizon line. You're going to have to draw another horizontal line. And because we don't have a vanishing point marked off to the side, you're just going to have to kind of eyeball it to see where you think it would go. So that's a little bit more advanced. If you feel comfortable doing that, you can. But I think for the purpose of this assignment, and especially if you're new to this style, I would highly recommend just keeping the buildings up above the horizon line because this gets a little bit tricky. So again, when buildings start to overlap, what'll happen is you'll have, let's say, this is the corner closest to you. This is the other side of the building on the front of the street. And then you're going to have buildings that start to go back this way too. So you can draw another vertical line straight up and down. And then again, take the corner that's the closest to you, line it up, and draw in your lines. Okay. You can also add details if you would like. Start thinking about some of the things that you talked about with your creative brainstorming, like what are some aspects of this park that are going to make it draw in visitors? Do you want to have maybe some type of a gate out in the front that shows the name of the park when you walk in? Think about, are things clearly labeled and easy for people to find? So you can also include signs on your buildings if you want to. Let me show you really quickly how we could do one with a sign on it. So again, let's do the vertical lines first because they're always straight up and down. And angle toward the vanishing point on the tops and the bottoms of everything. And then this could be an area, a rectangle, if you needed to write some kind of a sign. So let's say this was a place where you could get, oh, I don't know, ice cream. You could write ice cream. You've also been talking about how you're going to market. Later, we're going to talk about how to market to different audiences. So sometimes logos work the best because they help people understand what's there if they don't easily speak the language that you have written on your sign. So anyway, we'll talk about that later, but you might want to figure out how you label the buildings. Another thing you can add is details to the buildings, like awnings, for example. I might kind of freehand this a little bit, but let's see. So again, if you have a post for an awning is kind of like a canopy or a fabric sort of tent that goes over. So again, vertical lines always go straight up and down. It's your horizontal lines that are going to be the ones that are angled. And I'm going to kind of freehand in a little canopy here, maybe something with stripes in it, because for some reason that reminds me of ice cream. I think that's what Baskin-Robbins look like. They have stripes. Maybe Mrs. Pilarski could tell me if I'm remembering that correctly for logo design. Yeah, so anyway, so those are just some things you can add. You can also think about adding something like light posts, for example, or other kinds of signs. So again, they're going to follow the same rule, that they're going to get a little bit smaller and closer together as they go back toward the vanishing point. Since we have a lot of space up here, I would probably include something at the back of the park. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the horizon line. You can bring it down a little bit more if this were the main street of the park. So I'm going to kind of make something up really quick. I'm thinking about the Magic Kingdom, how they have the castle at the back. So I'm going to make this into, oh, I don't know, like the turret of the castle. So again, vertical lines, straight down. And you can have, a main part of your attraction back here. So maybe this is something that's important to your park that you want to be featured, and this is kind of the first thing that people see when they walk in. So again, I'm just freehanding this to make something back here. You can think about what you might want this to look like. And later on, we'll talk a little bit more too about designing the main attraction. So that is some basics about how to draw with one-point perspective. I know we have a short amount of time this week for you to work on this, so please understand that this is it can be sort of complex. Sometimes it's a lot to wrap your head around, especially if it's something you're not familiar with. Some people have a lot of great technical skill that they can apply to this, and it might be pretty easy, and some people struggle with it a little bit, and that's okay too, That's why I'm here, to answer any questions. You can write me. We can do a video chat if we need to, so I can help you walk through any technical difficulties that you're having. Remember that this is supposed to be fun. It should be enjoyable for you, and you should be enjoying what you're doing and be proud of your work. So please, just take your time to think through this, sit down in hopefully what you could find to be a relaxing and quiet space, and, you know, just try to get lost in the art. Try not to get too hung up on the details or frustrated. That's what I'm here for, to help. So please let me know if you have any questions, even if it's not open office hours. You know, write me a message on Google Classroom, write me an email, chat me, and I will do whatever I can to make sure that you are successful and that you have fun too. Again, as I mentioned, you don't have to color it, but if you have the time and the materials, you can. It's not necessary for this particular assignment. If you're comfortable with shading and you have the time and you want to, you can add that as well. But just remember, like I mentioned, that all vertical lines go straight up and down. All horizontal lines will go toward the vanishing point. And you can add as many details to these buildings as you would like. Use your imagination. Maybe there's things happening on the roofs, places for people to sit and eat food up there. Attractions along the way. If you want to start adding people and stuff, that's fine too. So just have fun with it. Take care of yourselves. I hope you're doing well, and I will talk to you soon.